Check. Okay.
So we on?
I'm chewing.
This thing's on?
It's on.
And you're chewing. Okay.
I know I said I wouldn't eat while we were recording, but I was hungry.
I was hungry, so I am.
I want to give a quick update about why there was a big delay in getting these episodes out.
Oh, yeah. Something happened.
So what was this? This was...
It was Wednesday.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Wednesday mid-afternoon.
Yeah.
It was about 3 o'clock.
Like 3:30.
I was in my office. I was climbing around. I was in my office. I was actually taking a brief work break to work on checking account and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the power started going up and down dramatically, and it went off, and then 10 seconds later it came back on, and it was up for 10 seconds and then went off, and it did this, I don't know, 3 or 4 times.
Right.
And I was frantically trying to shut down my Mac Pro, my old Mac Pro, which I'm trying to keep alive from 2000. It's from 2008. It's quite old.
Right.
And the UPS that it's on is also quite old and was not... I bought it when we moved in here, though, so it's 4 years old.
Right.
But it's not working properly. It says it's going to give you 30 minutes of runtime, but then it gives you 30 seconds. So...
Right.
So I was frantically trying to shut it down, and I couldn't get a screen to come on so that I could shut it down without just yanking the power.
Mm-hmm.
So it died anyway. Died horribly. And then basically I couldn't work. So I was texting people on the work Slack saying, well, my power's out. And I thought, it was well, this will be, this will be up in a few hours.
Yeah, maybe make it back to your desk.
But it turned out that there were 700, over the course of the afternoon, mm-hmm. 700,000 people in Michigan were left without power.
Yeah, it was not trivial.
Yeah, so there were actually hundreds of outages. Ours was one of the larger ones, which was good because it meant that they
attended to it faster.
Yeah, there are still people without power.
Yeah. I think our friend Susan was supposed to get it back today.
Yeah, we haven't heard.
I haven't heard yet.
She has. I know. Anyway, it was out for 30 hours, so it came back about 8 p.m. on Thursday. So this was a problem because at the 24-hour mark, we had to declare the fridge a disaster area.
Yep. And
basically say, okay, everything's warmed up too much. We have to either cook it and eat it right away or throw it out. And so we did a little of both. I mean, honestly, some of it was just a good reason to clean out our fridge.
Yeah.
But we had just put a bunch of very we had just done some shopping.
Right.
We had gotten some very nice local farm-raised meat.
Grass-fed,
pastured meat from a farmer in Chelsea.
Dexter.
Dexter, yeah.
Yeah. Not that they're that different, but yeah.
Well, no, they're different. And we were really looking forward to eating it.
Yeah, we were thinking about that meat. I had dreams about it, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, especially since out in the garden... The rosemary has been more than knee-high since the 4th of July. It grew up like crazy.
It's
we
gorgeous.
Have these huge, huge plants, huge rosemary plants reaching up for the sun. And I was just oh, yeah. Okay, my pretties, I'll see you later. I'm going to wrap you all up around a leg of lamb. And
it's going to be good.
Yeah, and we have parsley going nuts, and we have sage going nuts, and we have thyme going nuts, and lots of others. But those are the big ones for me.
Right.
So it was nerve-wracking to be basically forcibly out of work, away from work.
Yeah. No, it was putting you on edge. It really was.
And I wasn't quite sure what to do because technically I could have taken my laptop and gone into the Dearborn office, but I've never worked there. I've only been there twice. And
Right.
once was just to fill out some forms and have a brief training session.
I mean, do you even know where your desk is?
No, I don't know where my desk is. If I really do need to go in to an office to finish a project, I'll do it. But the thing is, the equipment I'm actually working on remotely is in California.
So
there's no really good reason for me to be in the office. So I want you to describe what you cooked when we decided to, like, the timer, basically the 24-hour time expired and we had to frantically cook, and we decided to try and share as much of our, rather than throw stuff away, we decided to try and cook as much as possible,
right,
and share it with as many people as we reasonably could.
Right. So I cooked as much as I could, and there were a few things that I'd hoped to like reimagine, repurpose that were old. I never got to them, and we just pitched them.
We just pitched them.
Right. But I made 3 principal dishes. Number 1, I made a coconut fish curry.
That was so good. And say what you used from our garden.
I used our lemongrass, and I have to tell you, I'd been dreaming about making that.
Yeah.
Since when we planted the lemongrass
last year, first of
the spring.
This year we have 2 pots with lemongrass in it. It's lovely. A beautiful plant.
Yeah. I mean, even if you never cook with it, it's beautiful to look at. It's a wonderful sensory experience to touch.
Yeah, it smells nice.
And just to smell it. But I took a bundle of lemongrass, and we happen to have a couple of lobster tails.
Don't ask. Really, don't ask.
Don't ask.
We actually did not buy them, but don't ask.
So,
and they had been frozen.
They had been frozen, but now it thawed.
Right.
So I threw those in with some lemongrass and some chicken broth. I had a quarter chicken broth left, and some onion, and I think that was about it.
From the garden.
And I let that just kind of simmer and stew for a bit while I poached 2 smallmouth bass.
Yes.
So I poached those bass, and then I filleted them.
We happened to have some smallmouth bass on hand.
So I pulled that out of the fridge. So I filleted them and peeled them and everything, and threw it in with some fresh basil and some carrots. Oh, there were carrots in the broth too. Some carrots and coconut milk, obviously.
Carrots, which were going bad. We had to.
Oh yeah. That had nothing to do with the power outage. Just my mismatch.
Well,
that's actually all.
A lot of stuff gets pushed to the back of the fridge. But then if the power's out, of course, it goes bad a lot faster.
So we salvaged a few, trimmed them up, got them into the broth and a couple of other dishes, and then I just threw the shellfish and the fish, fresh basil and some fresh chive.
Yeah.
In on top, and that was actually it. It was a very straightforward.
The flavors were very mild.
About 4 tablespoons of butter.
Yeah. The flavors were very, very mild, but it was so good.
Well, I think with the lemon, you want to actually taste the lemongrass.
Yeah. And
you want to taste some delicate fish flavors.
Yeah.
So
it was really nice. So you could taste the lobster in there, and oh my God, it was delicious.
Yeah. So that was one. Then I made a jerk chicken, but I knew I had a friend that her children like chicken a lot, and I didn't want it to be too spicy for them to eat.
Yeah,
so
it was mildly spicy.
So it was very mildly spicy when I say jerk chicken. It wasn't that sort of blow your head off spicy, because I used up all the cream that had gone. Yeah. The open cream in the fridge went in with the jerk spices to kind of take the edge off the heat.
Yeah.
I used it in 2 things. What's that stuff? Miso. We had some white miso, which probably was fine because it's so salty, but it's been in there forever. I decided to just use it up, so I mixed that up.
Right.
So about part of it went into. I used part of the miso in the broth, the chicken, the fish broth, and then the rest of the miso went into with the jerk chicken sauce.
Yeah, it gives it a really nice extra umami boost.
Yeah. So then that just simmered on the stovetop for a while until the chicken was cooked through, and then I reduced the sauce.
If people don't know, I'm not saying umami. I'm saying umami, which is basically
that sort of warm, savory
flavor, as opposed to salt, sweet, fat, and salty, sweet. Sour, and bitter.
Yeah. None of those. It's savory.
It's like an extra set of taste buds that were only recently discovered
in the West.
Yeah, right.
And then the last dish, this was actually, I feel I was very inspired, and I thought it came out too salty, but it was fine when the next day.
Yeah.
I roasted up some of that beef that was in the fridge because I was thawing it out to cook, and
and it had been thawed for too long.
It had been thawed for too long already. So I just like a shank and a roast.
This was some of the Dexter beef.
Some of that Dexter beef.
Oh yeah.
So I threw it in a pot with some tomatoes and tomato juice, and just let that kind of bubble along for a few hours.
Right, and then this is where I came in.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Paul was outside.
Well, you sent me out. You're like, here, do something with all this. Oh, also one of our friends showed up.
Right.
A friend of ours showed up with he has a biodynamic farm.
Right.
And he's like, he also did not have power, but he had a generator. Right. And he showed up with a whole bunch of
2 baskets of CSA because they weren't picked up.
Wonderful veggies.
Just fantastic.
Yeah, he runs a CSA.
Right. So it was like, I still have to find something to do with that okra, but the
oh yeah.
But we chopped and chopped and chopped and chopped some more.
Well, we set up because we wanted to grill, and we didn't have room in the kitchen because the kitchen had been pretty trashed before the power went out, and then we didn't have water.
Right.
Right. We set everything up on a picnic table outside, and then we set up the grill. And
yeah, and you were just grilling like a villain. It was out of control.
It had Josh chop up veggies, a lot of veggies.
Peel and chop, eggplant. Yeah.
And then I just threw everything on the grill, and eggplant has the most amazing properties. If you actually just, so it was a small grill with wood charcoal, and hardwood charcoal. And then if you throw eggplant right on it until it's actually burnt to hell, like the skin.
So it looks burnt.
It looks burnt to hell. Like the skin is blackened. It's blistered and blackened.
Yeah.
And then you flip it over and you basically blacken the other side too. It looks like it's burnt.
But it's perfect.
But oh my God, the flavor you get out of it. It's almost like a better meat substitute. Like I also grilled hot dogs for the kids, but I actually was taking a slab of this char grilled eggplant and putting some salt and pepper on it, and then putting it on a bun and eating it. Because,
it was good. It was so good.
Yeah. Char grilled eggplant. I mean, this is what you use as the base for making baba ganoush and all these traditional dishes. It's so good charred. Like not really literally charred.
Not literally burnt to a crisp, but
in the middle it's still just soft and cooked. Yeah.
And almost creamy, It's just marvelous texture.
It's delicious. So, and then threw on carrots, and I grilled something also that I've never tried grilling before, which was celery.
Yeah, that was
nice. You can grill celery.
And that came out really well, I thought.
It was good.
Yeah. So there was celery, eggplant, carrots, hot peppers, jalapeno peppers, I think. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. He gave us some freshly picked jalapenos, and I just sliced those in half, and then I grilled the crap out of those too. So they were a little bit blistered and black and
lovely.
Oh, that was delicious.
Yeah. So that came in. I chopped them all up, and so our basil has looked like hell, but tastes great. Okay, tastes fine.
Looks
awful.
It's really suffered from too much much water, too little water, too much heat, too little heat. And then
these sun blisters.
It's all the leaves look terrible, but it's still edible.
Oh, it's edible and tastes good. Yeah, tastes good. So, so I chopped up all those grilled vegetables, tossed them with fresh basil, and then mixed the whole business in the largest pan I could find with the stewed beef.
Yeah.
With the beef that had been stewed in tomato.
Right.
And which is not what you would do for like a traditional beef stew, which is a winter dish.
No.
This had a very summery flavor, I thought.
It was like a combination of ratatouille and beef stew.
Yeah. As if ratatouille met beef stew.
Yeah.
Went out for a party.
Right.
And
definitely a party.
In
your mouth.
There was fresh oregano too in the beef that stewed with the beef.
Yeah.
So a variety of small twigs could be found, but no one seemed to mind.
With the herbs.
Yeah, with the herbs, there were all these
the whole herbs.
Whole herbs that went in.
Sprigs and stems.
And so so after it was finally all said and done around 8:30, and I started packing it up. I packed up a couple of quarts of beef stew, and a couple of my friends got a little bit of everything.
Right.
And then one of my friends got as much as I could give her of the chicken and the fish curry.
Nice.
And it was all loved and appreciated. And as soon as we packed it up and I got in the car, the power came back on.
Right. I had literally finally like switched out of the mode of being concerned about work and switched out of the mode about being concerned about when's the power back on. Instead, I had gone into basically whole camping mode.
We're camping.
And I had set up wash tubs and filled them with bottled water. And I was in the process of hand washing dishes with like Dr. Bronner's in one tub and a bleach rinse in the other, which is like how we would do it if we're camping and don't have necessarily clean, sterile, like
hot water. You don't have hot water hot enough to sterilize. Right.
Hot water and necessarily sanitary water. Right.
Right.
So it was halfway through that, and suddenly the power came back.
Boing.
Yeah. So.
Well, I've got to apologize. I suspect this may be my fault. These long outages. The last long outage was the last time I really needed to clean the fridge.
Yeah, you're responsible.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm sorry.
DTE
I'll try
is
and
like,
do better.
oh, Grace really needs to clean the fridge. Throw the switch.
Keep it for at least 24 hours. She's not going to get anything done if it's not 24 hours.
No, I'm really pissed about this outage because I mean you can see from the outage map that there were literally hundreds of outages.
Yeah.
And so many people without power, and the infrastructure is in such bad shape, and DTE is earning record profits and shareholder payouts and investing just nothing in infrastructure, long-term infrastructure maintenance.
I know the planet is lost, but for a brief shining moment, you got a lot of return for investors. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But then, so like, we never did get an estimate. Yeah. I would check the online system, like, what's our estimated, and it would just say no estimate. Like, I don't know. Great.
Sucks to be you.
So I got more information actually from Detroit News than I did from DTE's website about our outage, right?
Right.
And then, then of course they sent me a customer satisfaction survey. And it led with is an email. Oh, also the day that the day on Friday, the day after the power came back on, the bill, our $340 bill went through.
I'll need some cash from you guys.
Yeah, and then on Saturday I got a customer satisfaction survey. They wanted to know how I felt about my recent transaction with DTE.
Yeah.
Which was the power outage, and what it said.
Oh, really? Yeah.
What the email said was, "We noticed you recently had an outage."
I did not.
Like, I did not have an outage. I was right where I'm supposed to be, doing right what I'm supposed to do. Your decaying infrastructure
had an outage.
Fell over. It's very frustrating that where we are now, basically, the civic infrastructure, as basically all those expenses are being pushed to individuals.
Individuals, right.
So every family or unit, every household
has to have their own power.
You've got to have your own microgrid, right. Basically.
Now, mind you, I'm a huge fan of small grids, but I'd like them to be neighborhood level.
Right.
Because honestly, if our neighborhood, and it kind of does, most of us can at some point accumulate $10,000 and put in our own grid for power interruptions.
Yes.
Collectively, we could put a fantastic grid together
for
all our power.
You could have a small scale natural gas turbine and a solar array.
Right.
So the turbine for like peak demand and the solar array with battery, like
for everything else.
Like, a Tesla power wall or something. Not that I want to give Elon Musk money, but But
still, right?
Yeah.
So the neighborhood could have its own grid.
Yeah.
Fairly easily.
Right.
At that cost. But instead, we're fractured enough that we're doing it as individuals.
Right.
And so deeply broken as a society that our collective grid and collective infrastructure
it's actually
non-existent.
It's falling over.
Right. It's falling over and collapsing.
Yeah. And
I'd like to just point out that that's actually a
choice.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
Because Lansing did not lose power in their municipally owned grid.
Right.
Grand Rapids with their privately owned grid did.
I mean, you always have like somebody's tree came down in their yard and wiped out a transformer.
Yeah, that's the thing that happens.
That's like a outage of one.
That's an outage of, or even the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
But and it's usually not for 3 days.
Right.
It's not, and I think Susan's going on 4 days. Some people are going to be 5-6 days without power.
Right.
And that's not a thing in a functional grid.
No, I know. It's so bad.
Absent some, act of God, right?
Here's the other thing that we're not... there's other things that we are talking about and other things that we aren't talking about. We are talking about how climate change influenced these storms. The storms that came through were almost reached the level of a derecho event with these straight line winds. They did a lot of damage in our garden. They were quite destructive.
Yes.
But an aspect of it that we're not talking about is that all these older trees are coming down all at once because they are top heavy. They are damaged. They have been... Their metabolisms, their growth structure, and all this have been damaged by excess carbon in the atmosphere.
Yes. So these trees are fragile.
They're more fragile than they should be.
Destruction. Right?
Yeah. And so,
a friend of the farm lost 4 or 5 trees blocking the road.
Yeah.
Falling down as he's trying to drive.
He described a nearby meadow near his house where there were every tree was
every tree at the edge was torn down and fallen into the meadow. Right?
So that seems almost like there was a microburst or even an F1, out there, but I don't think it was recorded.
Yeah.
But anyway,
smaller things frequently aren't, but yeah.
But all these, and this is just going to be more and more common because we're just losing stable weather.
Yes.
And it's not so much that our weather's going to become more violent, more chaotic, more energetic, and more unpredictable.
And I think the really bad part of that, the part that's really hard for me anyway, is the unpredictable part.
Unpredictable part is really bad for agriculture of any kind, at any scale.
At any scale. And
except maybe in your, in your room.
in your basement.
In your basement.
Right. Because, but not just agriculture, but just for any kind of planning, maintenance, and preservation. It's really hard to make a plan if all your factors are unpredictable.
Yeah. So that's where we're headed.
That's where we're going.
And this has been understood and anticipated for a long time, but we're not seeing any of these municipal utilities, at least not the private ones. There's
municipal, publicly owned utilities, and privately owned utilities.
Not municipal, that's the wrong word, but not municipally owned.
Right. All these privately owned utilities are dispersing profits to shareholders. Woo!
Right.
And they aren't doing shit for the infrastructure or maintenance.
Yeah, but so you're not seeing them hardening their infrastructure. You're not seeing them burying power lines. You're not seeing them replacing poles in advance. You're not seeing them do aggressive pruning of trees and whatnot around power lines to make it less likely that all this stuff falls over at the slightest provocation.
Well, and really, given this thing, especially in this region, I'm sure there are different factors in different regions. I can't see any case for not burying all of our line.
Yeah. It's not perfect because, oddly enough, even if you put power lines in a 6-foot trench, lightning still strikes them. Yeah.
That can happen.
Yeah.
So, it's not a perfect solution, but,
right.
It goes a long way.
It's also a big aesthetic improvement, I must say.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so that was our last week, and I was fortunate when I brought everything back up in the basement, all the audio gear and everything, only one piece took a hit.
Nice.
And that was it was a Furman rack power supply. And it, the switch, it's like a big power strip, except it goes into a rack.
Got it.
Right. And so... and it has voltage monitoring and all that, and all the my studio monitors were all and amplifiers were in there, attached to that, which meant that they didn't get blown up by these possible surges.
Right.
Which was great. But I'm gonna send this thing to my friend and see if he can replace the switch because it's way, way, way out of warranty.
Right.
And also, fortunately, I just happened to have another one.
Yay!
Right. So I was able to swap things around and get it back up. And the good news is my Mac Pro was not killed.
Did not die. It lived to serve another day.
Because if it had been, the podcast would be effectively dead for, I don't know, at least a few months until I got another computer going. Everything's thoroughly backed up, but the computer itself.
Yeah, you got to do it with the computer. You got to need the computer itself.
Right.
So that seems like a good introduction.
Yeah. I want to talk about two quick things from previous sections.
Right.
So one is we talked about Salon and how they are an aggregator.
Yeah.
And how they republish a lot of material from a lot of different sources.
Yes.
And you were saying a couple things that they have a basic neoliberal orientation, which is incredibly common. You can also just call it an establishment orientation, right. or they operate within the Overton window.
Yes.
Of what's acceptable discourse, which is honestly ungodly narrow these days.
It's perverse, but here it is.
And I want to point out, though, that I don't quite think of them that way because I do read quite a few people in Salon who are definitely outside the Overton window.
Yes, that happens. I think so.
And I want to mention it specifically. There's more, but one in particular is Chris Hedges.
Oh, yeah, he's a man.
He is one of my favorite writers. He's an incredible thinker. Very depressing and very grim.
Yeah, he never has good news.
He never has good news, but he's right. He's right.
He's just right. And I'm sorry that the right answer is so sad.
It's so sad, and so and especially as a critic of American imperialism.
Yeah.
Right. And also on this real climate hawk.
Yeah.
Or bear.
Climate bear? Is it hawk or dove?
But really bearish on climate.
Bearish on climate.
Yeah,
Got
it.
Go.
Sorry. Not a hawk.
Well, it's like war hawks and war doves, right? And there's bear markets and what other markets?
Bull markets.
Yeah, no, he's bearish on climate change.
Yeah, and really bearish on the continued fate of the American experiment, honestly.
Yeah, no, I was talking the other night with the kids about how the United States is basically an experimental country.
Yeah.
Right, a nation. It's an experimental nation state.
People don't realize how very, very young this country is.
Yeah.
And how our traditions are barely qualified as traditions.
Traditions, right. They're things we've done for 15 years, so now it's what we do.
Right.
Right.
Anyway, so but there's some, it could be that they publish a few figures. They publish them regularly, like monthly or something, not just randomly. But it could be that they include these outsiders, these sort of radical writers, to basically to give themselves cover for not being too conventional.
That's some plausible deniability.
Basically.
Yeah. No, we're not mainstream. Look at us. We got like Chris Hedges right here.
Yeah, because so there may be a bit of that going on.
Oh,
but I'm just saying they don't. I'm just saying, I mean, it is evidence that they don't really force things into an entirely
They don't precisely force things into the narrow conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that. But which is why I continue to read them, honestly.
Oh, I read everybody, though, even the people I don't like, especially the people I don't like. Damn.
Right.
So I don't feel like I ever need to justify what I read.
Sure.
Okay.
But
it's my face. I'll read with it whenever I want. Yeah.
I remembered through Googling and thinking for a while, the quote that I was trying to recall.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
When we were talking about very, very vocal anti-vaxxers who seemed very, very certain of their skepticism, while people who are like, I don't know, I'm just trying to get by, I don't know, I'm not an expert, they aren't nearly that vocal. They don't wind up like
they're not on the news,
right? Like the cautious people aren't the ones who are like threatening people's lives after a school board meeting, or saying, we know where you live, we're going to track you down.
No.
The quote, and there are many similar sentiments expressed in famous speeches and quotes and by other people, but the quote I was thinking of Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity.
Indeed.
That is the first stanza of The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. And I'll skip ahead to the last couple lines of the second stanza.
Yeah.
And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born.
My.
That's why I remember that poem. I studied it I was an English major. I studied, a bunch of Yeats.
Is it Yeats or Yeats?
Yeats.
Why? Is that the way he said it?
That's how I've always heard it.
Okay.
But you know what? This is the era of cancel culture, so we're going to yeet Yeats right into the sun.
Heating Yeats.
No.
William Butler Yeats.
Yeah, no, this is justifiably famous poem, but
right.
I people may not know. I was an English major. Some areas of special interest were medieval and Renaissance literature for me. This is modern,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I also spent a lot of time writing essays about John Donne and, also the Wakefield mystery plays and a lot of medieval literature and Renaissance plays,
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm overeducated.
But, it's good to have a wheelhouse.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was it. That's what I was trying to remember. Okay. I want to read.
Reflect on.
A piece that caught my eye that kind of talks about what would have happened if COVID had come upon us 75 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so people reference the 1918 flu pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had relatives that died in the 1918 flu pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
But I think something more recent, because still within living memory, there may be some living memory of the 1918 pandemic. Not a lot,
yeah.
But within living memory was the polio epidemic, which was not quite a pandemic. It was a series of sort of linked epidemic events. That lasted for many years.
Decades and decades.
But do you want to riff on this piece here?
Do you want to dive in on it, or do you have something you want to say first?
I'll just introduce it.
Sure, go for it.
This is from the Shepherd, which is some kind of a local newspaper in Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Yes.
Yeah. So
established 1982, Shepherd Express. The title is When the Polio Epidemic Forced Milwaukeeans to Stay at Home. This is by Michael Carriere, April 15th, 2020.
April. Yeah. All right. So just a little backstory on polio. Polio has been with humanity for a very, very long time. And
we have there's some indication that it existed as far back as ancient Egypt, during the reign of the pharaohs.
Yes. I mean, it's been around. Okay. And it did not become, and there would be localized outbreaks occasionally, but it wasn't a widespread scourge on humanity until, get this.
This is bizarre. Yeah.
Indoor plumbing. As indoor plumbing became widespread in the late 19th and early 20th century, the more and more widespread indoor plumbing became, the more and more we had polio outbreaks. Because typically, human infants nurse at the breast during the time period when they're frequently exposed to polio virus. And while they're nursing...
We should say it's transmitted via fecal-oral.
It's a fecal-oral transmission route. So, you're playing around outside, polio's in the water, you don't have a lot of and it's probably surface water that you engage in, mud and whatnot, and you're exposed to poliovirus at the same time that you're still nursing, and your mother has immunity that she transmits through her breast milk. So typically...
So you become immune very, very early on.
Very early. You are exposed, you become immune, and you typically don't see huge outbreaks. I mean, this is not to say that it didn't affect people and cause terrible problems, but
people occasionally... There's an issue in royal families where they had weak immune systems because they were inbred.
Weak immune systems because they were inbred, and access to better, cleaner systems.
Right. So if you grew up with indoor plumbing and sanitation, you missed that early, and your parents did.
And your parents did. You missed that early exposure.
You missed that early exposure and that early infusion of antibodies into your body via nursing.
Right.
And so when you were exposed a little later, you didn't have immunity, and it could do all kinds of horrible things.
There was a chance that you would be ill and recover without incident, but there was a significant chance you would have a terrible outcome.
It does horrible things to the nerves in your limbs and in your respiratory system. Right.
So that said, we started to see towards the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century just frequent, widespread, ongoing polio outbreaks. And at various points, schools were closed, kids didn't play together, they were shut in homes for whole summers, several summers in a row. So how should we say? So yeah, it's not actually new. These stay-at-home orders that we've seen for this pandemic were issued by the county health officials in lots of municipalities, but also in Milwaukee, because they were trying to stem the spread of poliomyelitis. It's commonly known as polio. Let's see, it's a highly infectious disease caused by a virus that attacks the nervous system. No longer a threat, largely due to vaccination. Mm-hmm. Primarily due to vaccination. And let's just be clear, though, what we thought was worth shutting down schools and keeping children at home and keeping families at home.
Right.
11 children in a community died in Milwaukee.
11. That's it.
10 children died in Michigan so Michigan's larger than Milwaukee was at the time.
Right.
And it's a good order of magnitude different in like the emotional impact. But 10 children died here from the first iteration of the coronavirus.
Yes. Yeah.
And we've always thought it was worthwhile to put the brakes on everything if something's killing children.
Historically, we've thought that.
Historically, that's something we've thought. That's not new. That's not bizarre.
White children. Right.
Oh, he said it out loud. Because, we took a long time, a long leisure time with lead.
Yeah.
And don't start with me on Flint. So Milwaukee initiated a polio quarantine for children, quarantine for children younger than 12, starting during August and September of 1944. Nearby suburbs followed suit. The Greendale Board of Health, for example, established a similar quarantine on August 30th, 1944. Children were relegated to their own homes and backyards. Because it's a viral spread, it's fecal-oral primarily, but you can transmit it to someone else in play. It's a virus, right? It's a respiratory virus.
You can cough it out.
You can cough it out.
You can spread it that way.
You cough on your hand, you put it on the ball, your friend plays with the ball.
Right.
Right.
It's not as contagious as some things like measles, but it is contagious.
It is contagious, and it's not horrible. And that's the other thing. This was a disease that was not that contagious.
Yeah.
And actually did not kill very many children in raw numbers.
In raw numbers, in terms of raw numbers,
didn't kill that many kids.
It is, though, the way that people died and suffered with the disease was particularly graphic.
Just horrifying and graphic.
And it put some adults in iron lungs, too.
Yes.
And crippled adults, too.
I mean, it's a crippling disease.
People, to this day, some public figures, like, say, musician Joni Mitchell, right? So, have difficulty walking with full strength and all this because
childhood polio.
They had polio as children.
Right.
Yeah.
So the odds of survival were fairly high, but there were significant odds of disability, of long-term injury, and of death, and a painful, gruesome death. And
suffocation, basically.
You just suffocate to death, right? And here's the other tail end of this, right? The tail piece that I think is so critical to understand is we mounted a great scientific charge to develop a vaccine, and we did.
Yes. And
I'd like to point out that that vaccine was not profited on by anyone.
Salk actually made it patent-free.
Patent-free. So it was free to everyone, anywhere,
right,
to have the polio vaccine.
Yeah. Have you heard that the providers are now increasing? They're starting to increase the prices for COVID vaccines.
Really?
Now already.
Well, there's more demand. So what else do you think?
Certainly was expected, but like already.
But right
yes,
now?
Already.
All right. Well, the demand's greater, so how else will this work out? I'm just saying. So humanity actually did develop a polio vaccine. The individual that was in a position to gatekeep made it available to the public, patent-free. And it took a brief 25 years to get everyone vaccinated and to bring the disease to heal.
Right. That's the thing I wanted to discuss, really, is that this was not a quick process at all.
No.
It wasn't a huge exponential, a singular huge exponential outbreak.
Right.
It was a series of linked epidemics that took years and actually
decades.
The whole process of the 20th century polio outbreaks, that didn't really come completely under control
till our lifetimes.
Till
our childhoods.
Yeah, until the 70s.
Yep.
So it was a process that started in the 40s and roughly ended in the 70s.
And it was a great victory,
Yes.
It's a vaccine that I if there are vaccines that I'm interested in or would champion, polio is one of them.
Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile. Primarily because it's hard to predict who is going to be vulnerable to polio's ravages.
Yeah.
It's hard to predict which children are going to die. It's hard to predict which children are going to be maimed, and so on.
Do you remember getting the vaccine?
No, I don't remember it. I was very young.
So I remember getting polio vaccine, and I got a smallpox vaccine.
See,
as well.
I never got a smallpox vaccine.
That was a generational difference because smallpox was effectively eradicated.
The polio vaccine is still given. Smallpox is not given. It's not circulating anymore, so it doesn't need to be given.
Right.
If there was an outbreak and smallpox was circulating, you'd want the vaccine.
Yeah. No, I've got a scar because the way the smallpox vaccine was administered was quite strange.
Are they like scrape your skin open?
No, it's
It's not that scrape?
No, it's weirder than that. They dip. They have a solution, and they dip this little steel trident, like a little 3-pronged fork, in the solution, and then they pick a spot on your upper arm,
right,
and they stab you repeatedly, like a dozen times. Bam, 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 bam.
Well, yeah, they rip your skin open. Right. They stab you with it.
They stab you with it in with this. They dunk it and stab you, and it definitely leaves a scar.
Right.
Because it's a little bit hard to get your body to mount a robust
response to smallpox.
The way they used to do it at the time of the Continental Army at Valley Forge and whatnot was they would cut them and put pus from an infected person under their, in the cut.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Right. So it's a bit better than that.
I'd have a lot of pause about that vaccination personally.
But it's slightly barbaric.
It really is.
Yeah.
Even the one you got was barbaric in the 20th century.
Well, it certainly hurt a lot more than any shot that I ever had. That's one of the reasons I remember it so well. And it left a visible like a puckered scar.
You have that scar today, right?
Yeah, a lot, and people my age all have,
the smallpox vaccines.
Yeah,
right.
Smallpox scars.
But no, I was vaccinated against polio.
Not smallpox itself, because that's much worse.
Yeah, that's you may not live to tell the story.
Yeah.
But no, I was vaccinated against polio and
Yeah.
to the kids. It's a common childhood vaccine.
Yeah.
And
very, very low rate of complications as well.
Yeah.
Compared to some others.
Compared to some other vaccines. And I think the real issue, I think this is analogous to COVID, is in some ways, with polio, you don't know who's going to suffer the most.
Right.
And again, the other good analogy is with COVID, a lot of people will be fine. A lot of people will get polio and be fine.
Yeah.
A lot of people. But some people will have terrible outcomes. And unlike COVID, it's really hard to predict whom. Now, you can't predict with perfect accuracy with COVID, but we know that there are specific groups that are more at risk than others, statistically.
Can I read a little bit?
Please.
Oh, okay. Across the nation, the polio epidemic reached a fever pitch from the 1940s through the mid-1950s. There were more than 57,000 cases reported in 1952 alone, and the disease killed an average of close to 1,900 people each year between 1951 to 1954. In a strategy that sounds familiar to those living through the current public health crisis, businesses like Schuster's department store began allowing Milwaukee residents to shop by phone for such things as children's toys, books, and records. Curbside pickup. Authorities went to great lengths to make sure children stayed inside the quarantine. In Greendale, police officer Arthur Kruger was charged to patrol the town, making sure no young person dared leave their home. Yet Kruger understood how difficult this time was for all Greendale residents, so he approached his job with great compassion. Going by the nickname Polio Romeo, Kruger would sing songs and read stories over his patrol car's loudspeaker as he sought to comfort children throughout Greendale. How did he do this while driving? But
yeah. I sing while I drive all the time.
There's a funny anecdote. It says, in Whitefish Bay, the children of two neighboring families on North Diversey Boulevard connected a pulley system between their homes, allowing them to send notes to each other without violating the quarantine order. Yeah, they could still spread it, right? Anyway. So this was, and if you skip ahead, you find out that although the inoculation program began in April 1955, in May 1960, the Milwaukee Sentinel was still running headlines like polio epidemic feared this year.
It was 5 years, right?
Because people were not taking the steps to avoid getting the disease. By the end of the 1950s, 49% of Americans had not yet received the polio vaccine.
Yeah.
Right. By 1962, the average number of yearly polio cases across the country had dropped to 910. The CDC declared the U.S. to be polio-free in 1979.
Right, the late 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were doing quarantines for polio because a couple of thousand people died.
This was not hugely controversial.
And it wasn't really controversial. It's like, hey, a couple of thousand people died. Let's just put the brakes on. And it was a common thing. By the late 40s and the 50s, it was standard and common that, okay, there's a polio outbreak, we're going to have a quarantine.
I have not seen any references to violent threats at school board meetings.
Historically, no. That wasn't a thing. People, I will say this. People don't like wearing masks.
No.
They didn't in the flu pandemic in 1918 and 1919.
Right.
They were like mad about it and irritated and whatnot. I'm not sure why exactly. I certainly understand that it's challenging to spend an entire workday in an uncomfortable mask. Well, I get that.
Honestly, when I was masking in the office and being really cautious, the bigger challenge was trying to not share the restroom.
Oh, yeah.
Not use the
But if you get your mask on, you're not drinking anything, right? Yeah.
Like not drink water, not eat anything in the office, and not use the restroom for 8 hours.
For 8 hours. Go.
Yeah.
So I get sort of the discomfort around wearing and if it's an effective mask, effective at protecting you, it's going to be hard to breathe in.
Yeah, it's gonna not you get used to it, but it will not feel great when you're getting used to it.
Right, and so But what was really bizarre to me and like incomprehensible to me, honestly, is just like, you don't want to wear a mask in the grocery store for 20 minutes.
Right.
You don't want to wear a mask, for whatever it is you're doing. It's a public shared space, right?
In our case, buying groceries for a household of with 7 kids is it's more than 20 minutes in the grocery store.
But yes. Not more than 45.
Yeah,
when I'm going, yeah,
it's a lot of loading and unloading.
It's a good workout, honestly. I kind of miss it. But this ethos that it's somehow just some horrendous,
it's an intolerable violation of your personal liberties.
That you're gonna wear a mask at the grocery store. That's a little weird to me. I don't quite get that.
Yeah.
It's some kind of waking horror that you're going to be asked to wear a mask at the farmer's market or something. I don't get it.
There's so many weird memes circulating. Like there's one of a woman showing a mask that says, "This is my mask after one day. This can't be sanitary." And it looks like she like smoked a cigar through the mask.
Right.
It's all like yellowed and stained and everything. I'm like, what the hell are you doing with your mask? I used to wear a mask every day for a week, and it never looked like that.
Like even at all. So I don't know. It's a little more self-revelatory than she'd expect.
She's just dying of emphysema or something.
Didn't mention that. Yeah. So, but historically, this kind of resistance is not. We've not seen it historically. This kind of resistance to quarantines, we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But it's a political thing now. It's very strange, which gets back to this thing that one of my sawhorses that I like to go back. I'm always on this sawhorse.
All right.
We have this epistemological closure where people are actually living in alternate universes.
Sandbox. Standing on a soapbox.
Oh, so a soapbox. No, people are.
You're on a soapbox, not on a sawhorse.
So it's a soapbox. Is that what it is?
Yeah, you're standing on a soapbox, so you can be heard at the town square.
I'm then there's a phrase people use. Is it hobby horse?
A hobby horse. Okay, you're a hobby horse.
I'm on my favorite hobby, not a sawhorse. Sorry, guys.
No, I'm just like trying to piece together hobby horse. And never mind.
Mixed metaphor.
Yeah.
Real mix of kind of like a metaphor salad, really.
Word salad, more like.
Okay, from the top.
Your favorite hobby horse to ride
is epistemological closure.
Yes.
And how many people, they walk next to us on the street, but they're actually living in an alternate universe than you are.
Right.
And
this was inevitable.
And it's
given the total fragmentation of media catering to every market.
Complete fragmentation of media, complete fragmentation of even society. People don't see other folks from other socioeconomic realms unless they're engaged in some kind of economic trade. And even that is rare.
Right.
Like the things that you buy in your economic class, you don't buy them from people too far outside of your economic class.
Oh, right. No. Our Walmart is Target. And, the other people's Walmart is Walmart.
Right.
They have almost the same things on the shelves.
Same products on the shelves. But we don't go into the same buildings to buy them,
and then yet another sort of population's Walmart is Meijer,
Oh, right. It's Meijer. And then there's like Costco and Sam's Club. And there are different populations.
They're completely different. Yeah, I would never set foot.
I'm not going to a Sam's Club.
I would never set foot in a Sam's Club, but I go to Costco all the time. Right. Yeah. No, these are all like dumb.
I don't go to Walmart. I go to IKEA.
These are dumb signifiers.
They really are.
They're tribal signifiers.
They're tribal signifiers. And we have this.
So, Home Depot or Lowe's? Well, depends on your class.
I guess. Well, and some of it's class, some of it's tribal, some of it's political. Right. But there are whole networks of economy that you and I and our listeners just don't know about.
Oh, absolutely.
Like those places where, like, you may have seen, like, their brand on a gas station window.
Yes.
Where you can buy Bitcoin to buy phone minutes to communicate with your relatives overseas.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I've never actually used these things.
Right. No.
But they exist, and it's a huge market.
Grace and I try pretty hard to get out of our bubble, and we go into bodegas and chicken shacks and
other places,
obscure hole-in-the-wall places, and Asian markets, and wherever whatever looks interesting.
If we can, if it makes sense.
It's quite intriguing. It's quite enlightening. There's an actual bodega just up the road here.
Oh, it's a nice little bodega too.
Yeah, and it's and a taco. They just expanded into a taco restaurant next to it.
First class tacos. There was one though, I don't remember which one, that wasn't that good. But most of the tacos were really next level. Yeah, I don't remember which one. That's the problem.
It'll come up.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hopefully, doing the podcast is not while we're sleeping.
Right.
But that closure means that you can have a completely valid, rational, real to you experience.
Yeah.
That is, to someone from a different universe, appears to be a figment of your imagination.
Right. Absolutely.
And
you heard some of. If you listened to part 3, you heard some of that in the way I was arguing. The people that were arguing with me on Twitter, they're like, "What are you talking about?
What are you even talking about?
Is this a hard no? Everything you're saying is obviously wrong.
Right. Like, what color is the sky?
Completely wrong.
What color is the sky in your planet?
You're so wrong that I can't even begin to explain to you how wrong you are.
And I'll be frank, I have thought and sometimes said that to people.
Sure.
I'm trying to have a dialogue
from the
with.
opposite person.
Not even the opposite, from some different tribe. I'm like, I can't even explain how you're wrong.
Yeah. No, you can't. The firebenders can't teach firebending to the water tribe.
No, that's not how it works.
Right.
So, I think
only the avatar can master all the 4 elements.
So I think we were going to end up here once we started down the path of epistemological closure, but it is sad to see it unfold, where these things that are pretty basic and straightforward. It's not complicated, and it's challenging, but not. It's hard. It's simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
These are simple things to do that can keep us safe and preserve the lives of children, but they're not easy things to do. They're just simple. Yeah. So yes, keeping your kids at home all summer.
Yeah.
And there are various sociological supports that don't exist anymore in American society.
That's the thing.
That have ceased to exist.
Like the white middle class residents of these neighborhoods in Milwaukee probably had stay-at-home moms. This was quite possible for them to do economically.
And let's be perfectly frank. Black and poor women have always worked. I mean, white feminism is always going on about women getting into the workforce.
Right.
Black and poor women have always worked.
Right.
That's always been reality.
But I'm just saying they didn't have the idea of keeping their kids home wasn't going to be an unbearable economic burden for due to childcare or something like that.
For white middle class moms, but even for black and poor moms,
right? They traditionally have. That hasn't been a financial transaction. That's been that's a community thing.
Well, it's a community thing.
Families and community.
And B,
it
was socially acceptable to let your children run free all summer.
Well, that too.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if your children were at home in the yard unattended,
right.
No one was calling the cops.
Right.
Even if it's a quarantine, they couldn't turn them loose in the neighborhood. But,
sure.
There's a tradition in poor and black households.
Right.
Or black households and poor households. That you would probably just obey your mother when she's not there.
Right.
And stay in the house like you're supposed to. And I have to say, though, the social climate that allowed poor mothers and black mothers to leave their children at home while they went to work, and the social structure that allowed them to say, listen, don't leave this house.
Yeah.
There's a quarantine, don't leave.
Right.
And have that happen.
Right.
And not turn into a nightmare.
Yes.
We don't live there anymore.
No, because that probably would have involved things like, if your father hears about this when he gets home, he's going to beat your ass with a belt, right?
Yes.
So there was a fair amount of terror involved.
Absolutely. And so we don't live there anymore.
Right.
Mostly
for the good.
Mostly for the good.
Yeah.
But also this climate where there were stay-at-home mothers in middle-class neighborhoods that could just, make you ice pops and you could go dig in the backyard all summer.
Sure. Right.
It was not the most fun, but, it wasn't the end of the world.
Right.
And the point was, no one's going to die.
Right.
That was the whole point. So right now, we're in a situation...
No one needs to die.
No one needs to die. No one needs to die over this. So right now we're in the situation where we're like, yes, some of these children will die, but, it's a price we're willing to pay.
Yeah.
And it's not deeper or more profound than that.
No.
So
we're gonna talk about a couple pieces that
aged like milk.
Well, that seem or even a month ago seemed fairly reasonable, and you would, if you were in a particular tribe, you would read along. We talked about how people read along and things that seem obvious to them they don't, or like trustworthy sources.
Right.
They just sort of nod along and they're like, "Yep, now I know everything I need to know."
Yep. Okay.
And they do not interrogate either the facts of the source, the facts being presented, or their framing, and that framing is everything. So. Yeah, tell us who we're going to hear from. So
Abdul El-Sayed ran for governor of Michigan a couple of years back.
We went to his rally. He was introduced by Bernie Sanders. I recorded the whole thing. There's a previous podcast episode with all the speeches, including Nina Turner's.
Yeah, I met Nina Turner there.
That was exciting.
It was exciting. So he's got this newsletter called The Incision, and apparently it's kind of a little bit of a grift, like many political people have, where he wants you to send him some money. But every week he sends a little note. And July 22nd, he sent out a little brief newsletter going on about how vaccine verification was more and better than mask mandates. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to just read for a bit here. Vaccine verification is greater than mask mandates. The resurgence of universal mask guidelines is missing a critical point. Cases are up nearly threefold over the past 2 weeks, and hospitalizations and deaths are following suit. Though cases are up in all 50 states, they are being driven by spikes in communities with low vaccination rates. Last week, case growth was 3 times higher in states where less than half the population was vaccinated. Missouri, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, states where right-wing anti-science ideological opposition has hardened quote, vaccine hesitancy into full-on vaccine opposition, are epicenters. Though there have been reports of breakthrough infections among vaccinated people, it's rare that these infections are symptomatic, let alone cause serious illness. A full 97% of hospitalizations or deaths are among the unvaccinated. As the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Director Rochelle Walensky called it, this is indeed a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Yet in response, local officials are calling for a return to universal mask mandates for the unvaccinated and vaccinated. Los Angeles County, the most populous in the country, reinstituted their universal mask mandate last week after it had been lifted for nearly a month. Make no mistake, masks have been and continue to be one of the most important tools in the public health arsenal against this pandemic. They are the best way to prevent COVID-19 transmission, aside from vaccination.
Yeah, we're going to talk about
Which is why
that.
universal mask mandates are such a curious policy response. Of course, it makes sense to require masks for people who are not vaccinated, but why require them among the vaccinated? This is a misstep.
This is a misstep.
And ultimately, his thesis or his point is having mask mandates, a universal mask mandate, will weaken support for the vaccine. Which, I don't know.
Right. If you tell people who are vaccinated that they still have to wear a mask, if that's the message, then people will be like, well, why would I even bother to get vaccinated? The only point was so I can take off this stupid mask.
But again, that's what the establishment sold us.
Yes, bill of goods.
That was the bill of goods the people were sold.
Yeah.
Right? And
I tried to sell.
Yeah. I didn't buy it, but a lot of people did. And now he's arguing that we have to reward vaccinated people with not wearing masks.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, for my part, we could give vaccinated people an ice cream. That's a fine reward.
Right.
And we could say, thank you, here's an ice cream, have a nice day.
Or if they need to enter you into this lottery,
sure,
that's fine. Or, give them $100 or $500 or whatever.
But, don't reward them with something that harms people.
Right. So
and,
I think a lot of this is basically, if you took the sort of establishment message about COVID prior to Delta,
right,
this is pretty much it.
This is it. And the implicit thing that he does not state directly is that being vaccinated stops you from transmitting the virus.
Yes.
We have never known that to be true.
Yes, and we now know it.
When we now know it to be false.
To be untrue, especially with the Delta variant.
Right. We now know that that's false, especially with Delta, and at no point did we know for certain that you could not transmit the virus to other people if you were vaccinated.
Right.
So
I think he does make a couple points which I think are pretty good further on. He says, universal mask mandates rest on the misplaced assumption that the people for whom masking policy is most important, the unvaccinated, give a damn what public health officials have to say in the first place.
Half those people are children.
Yes, exactly. They don't deserve to be punished. The children don't deserve to be punished for the sins of their parents and family and school teachers and, people around them.
And their leadership.
But I do think that point about, literally the people who are going to ignore public health official messages are the people that most need to be reached, that most need to be.
Oh, right. Yeah. Those are the people that most need to mask.
Yeah.
Right.
And he points out also that the announcements allowing vaccinated people to take off their masks, they thought that this would incentivize people to get vaccinated. But really, people aren't dumb.
No.
It meant that basically people who were actually anti-vaxxers could just pretend to be vaccinated. And sure, I'm vaccinated. You're not allowed to ask me questions like that. That's a HIPAA violation or whatever.
But also, establishments just said on the door, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. And if you're unvaccinated, please wear a mask.
Right.
And that was the end of it.
Right.
So you can just walk in. You don't have to say anything to anybody.
And no one's, asking for any kind of, they're not asking for your papers, please. Even though there's a right-wing trope that this is, they're doing this to turn into a police state where you have to show your papers to do anything. Right. But it's not literally happening. It's certainly not happening at Costco.
No, it is not. So yeah, it was the dumbest ass thing I've seen the CDC do in a while. And the CDC has a long list of dumbass things.
Right. And this is a good point, too. The CDC, like local officials pushing mask mandates, now overestimated its own influence. Well, especially when, you had the president of the United States saying, well, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. You look stupid. And I'm not going to wear one. I'm not going to wear one. But, go ahead, knock yourself out. Yeah, that's not
called undermining authority.
Right. That's not a coherent, messaging. That's not.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
So, but here he says this thing that I think is insidious, especially amongst neoliberals, especially inside the Overton window.
Right.
Those who are choosing not to get vaccinated today were choosing not to wear masks before.
Yeah.
That's actually not true.
It's not. No,
it's not true.
We talked about this last time.
No.
An awful lot of the vocal Trump supporters and anti-maskers, they actually do get vaccinated.
They got their vax, they got their shot early, and often they got both of them.
Right.
And now they don't mask and they don't want to.
It's vaccines for me and not for thee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they got their vaccine, and you know what? They're not going to wear a mask. They didn't wear one then. They're not wearing one now.
They didn't wear one then. They're not going to wear one now.
They're safe, and they can spread it to other people.
He points out that public health officials are undercutting what authority they do have with the back and forth, on again, off again mask policy, which goes back to Fauci lying about the need for masks
at all, even.
Because of a public health crisis, the lack of masks early on. Right.
Well, and yeah.
And then he says requiring masks among the vaccinated falsely signals that vaccines aren't as protective as they actually are. Yeah, pre-Delta.
That was the aged like milk part.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So many breakthrough infections, so many infections spreading, even among people who are
vaccinated. Right.
And yes, the vaccine is still immensely valuable, as I said before.
To you,
at protecting you. Overwhelmingly likely odds you will not be seriously sick or hospitalized if you are vaccinated and infected.
Right.
Not overwhelmingly, but good odds.
The odds are better than they were.
Much better.
Much better than they were.
Yeah. But, if you're a child...
yes, this
or any
part,
of those other risk factors.
Those risk factors and things.
Yeah.
Or not, is that actually being a child is not a risk factor. You're unvaccinated.
No. Right.
And if you're a child who has risk factors for some reason,
you're even higher.
It's even higher, right? So I'm actually going to read this paragraph.
Go ahead.
I think you read part of it just a moment ago, but there's another risk. Requiring masks among the vaccinated falsely signals that vaccines aren't as protective as they actually are, which undercuts the incentive to get vaccinated in the first place.
So he's basically advocating lying to the population.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's exactly the opposite of what we need. Given that our best hope at finally bringing this pandemic to an end will be through achieving enough vaccination to approach some semblance of herd immunity.
Not possible.
It's not possible. And really, it was never possible with a vaccine that does not stop transmission.
Not a terminating vaccine.
Right.
And then he says it's also critical. It's like an afterthought. It's also critical to protecting those who can't get vaccinated, like children and immunocompromised people.
But that paragraph was the heart of the narrative.
Right.
That was the only narrative.
Right.
That's what we were fighting for. That's what we're doing. That's what the vaccine is for. That's why vaccination is important. That was the whole point of the narrative.
And he's basically advocating the noble lie.
The noble lie. Well, right. Yeah, right? But to basically lie to vaccinated people and say...
Or just simplify the message to the point where it's not quite true.
It's not actually true anymore, right? So you're going to tell vaccinated people that it's just fine if they don't have a mask on because they're not making anyone sick. And really, this is this quasi-religious thing I keep talking about.
Right.
Where you've been virtuous. You've been good.
Yes.
Nothing else is required.
Right. You've done your
part.
Yeah. You
And where the vaccine takes on this quality of like...
You received the Holy Communion.
Right. So now you don't need to do anything at all. It's off the hook. Versus the reality that we're in a pandemic with a disease that's highly transmissible, even before the Delta variant. And things have to be different to keep everyone safe.
Right. And he does he's like, because you stupid motherfuckers didn't get your shots, here's what's going to happen next. And basically now you see the fascist emerging, right?
So what's the likely outcome of new universal mask mandates? Vaccinated people who believe in science masking up, while unvaccinated people remain maskless and unvaccinated. Rather than universal mask mandates, we need vaccine verification that requires people to either vax up or mask up. And my side note was, or test. Actually, you don't have to do either. You can just test everyone more.
If you really had a good regime of universal regular testing.
Right. Where you could say, show me a negative PCR test from the last 72 hours before you enter this building.
Right.
Okay? That would actually be the thing that stops the most transmissions. Okay? Just to be very clear about the goals of our interventions.
Public health interventions. Yeah.
So in response to rising case rates in France, President Emmanuel Macron, not Macron, announced a sweeping new policy requiring evidence of either COVID-19 vaccination or a negative PCR test to gain entry into government buildings and cultural centers like bars, restaurants, and museums. Just because it's in France doesn't mean a bar is a cultural center.
Bars in France are cafes, right?
Well, not necessarily. Bars in Paris are just as nasty as they are here.
Okay.
Within 24 hours of the announcement, 1.7 million people booked vaccination appointments. Nearly 1 million were vaccinated one day. It was a national record. But there's also been public outcry. People took to the streets and compared themselves to, I'm not going to say it. A small group of people, was this?
I'll say it.
Come on.
Some compared themselves to Jews forced to wear Stars of David in Nazi Germany.
I just feel like we can't even say that out loud. That's just
it's disgusting.
But the historical inaccuracy and shrillness of these protests highlight what's at stake. This isn't about discrimination. Vaccine resistance is an identity.
Wrong.
A small group of people whipped into hysteria over conspiracy theories and lies are now painting themselves as victims because the government has stepped in to stop them from holding the rest of the country hostage to this pandemic. I believe it's
the clearest distillation of this belief that that people who don't get vaccinated, which by the way still includes children, that hasn't changed since in the last 5 minutes, are terrorists.
They're terrorists. Right? They're holding us all hostage.
And that liberals,
look at these people.
Decent people should reserve their outrage for these terrorists.
For these terrorists.
It's kind of
holding
obscene.
the nation hostage.
It's more than a little obscene.
When actually all of us have a common enemy. It's called the virus. Anti-vaxxer hysteria would be far more pronounced in the U.S., making federal vaccine verification nearly impossible, if not practically, then politically.
Than politically.
Oh, right. Than politically.
He has a typo.
Oh, okay. The Biden administration has already affirmed that it will steer clear of a federal verification mandate.
So, already giving up any.
He's just practicing for the Republicans.
Right.
That said, short of mandating vaccine verification, there's a lot that can be done to facilitate them. Yes. At no point in this discourse does he engage any of the realities of why people are vaccine hesitant in the United States.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure that needs to be repeated. I mean, he's just
we don't need to, but he talks about maybe employers could require it, maybe they couldn't. There's some lack of clarity about this,
Yeah. Well, okay, I am going to read this one last thing because it's a framing issue. Just like that one particular paragraph is the heart and soul of the narrative until Delta laid bare all the fallacies.
This was dated July 22nd, though.
Exactly. There was no.
He's shockingly behind the curve as far as the reality for people facing this problem.
Yes. Way behind the curve. There was no reason to write this at that time.
No
reason to publish this.
Unless he copied and pasted it out of stuff he had on his hard drive.
Right. So on the one hand, that one paragraph is the heart and soul of the narrative before we decided to send it down the memory hole and pretend that everything's working exactly what we said. What do you mean?
Oceania has always been at war with Eastasia.
Why would you ask? Right. This is another important narrative piece here. There is, of course, a tragic irony in all this. At core, the same anti-science ideology that fashions itself as the protectors of law and order claims also to believe in liberty and freedom. When it comes to vaccines, masks, and the public good in the midst of a pandemic, they are yet robbing all of us of our liberty and freedom while rejecting the very basis of law and order, that the government has a responsibility to protect us in times of danger. Not that the government's going to do a goddamn thing, but right now, that means getting more vaccines in arms. A return to universal masking won't do that, but vaccine verification just might.
Sure, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So that right there is this thing where it's this polarizing polarization thing.
And he's participating and engaging in the polarization rather than trying to damp it down. Talk facts.
And speak facts. Because actually, if you really want to end that polarization, you have to speak in fully lucid facts.
And he's comfortable with spreading the noble lie and comfortable with
sort of soft disinformation.
Disinformation and comfortable with framing his fellow Americans as terrorists. Yeah.
It was really just sad to read,
It's frustrating because I was really hoping he would be elected as governor, and don't get me wrong, he probably would have been a much better governor during the pandemic.
I think he would have been a much better governor.
An actual public health official.
Or is, right?
Yeah. But yeah, here we are. But he's not. He's a politician. his neoliberal worldview, in my view, is not at all admirable, and it's not coherent, and it's authoritarian.
It's deeply authoritarian.
Yeah.
Because really,
it's condescending as hell too.
Yeah. If he talks about people, like public health officials, the CDC, local county health departments, not overestimating their own authority, right?
Yeah.
And certainly, everybody and his brother likes to laugh at a public health ad. They're usually ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, remember the vitamin D promotion in Canada?
No, but that's.
Are you looking for the D?
Oh God.
Get your D today.
Right.
Have you gotten the D? Right? And like these young people smiling and winking, right?
Good Lord.
So everyone loves a good public health ad. Don't get me wrong. We all like to laugh.
Yeah.
And that's not their strength and authority. But the fact is that public health departments, all public health departments, have sweeping authority with restrictions on their use. Right?
Say that we talked about some of these points last March.
Last year, right? So he's talking about how underestimating their authority and never addresses the full authority that they have to just close these fucking restaurants.
Right.
Because it's a public health authority.
Right.
And it's a public health emergency. Just close them. The one body of government that can do that unilaterally is the public health department.
Yeah.
So all these establishments, we can close them for a week and just see how it goes. And reevaluate. So there's a certain disingenuousness in him talking about this and glossing these facts and glossing the realities of what they can and can't do and how they could do it and boiling everything down to purchasing a pharmaceutical.
Right. Yeah, which cannot solve the problem.
Cannot solve the problem.
Right.
So this last one, I think, leads us to this last article, which is... it's kind of amazing, actually. I'm just amazed by this article.
Yeah.
I'll be clear that I'm not amazed in a good way,
right?
But I'm truly amazed. The article's called "What We Got Wrong and Right About COVID-19."
This is the framing of this is that it's basically a panel discussion between smart people that you should be listening to.
They're experts. They're epidemiologists.
It has a chummy, just between us friends, kind of, wink and a nod framing to it, which is dumb as hell, but people eat that up. Let's just chat, about what's going on in the world, and they say the
dumbest ass things
you've ever heard, and it's such a fake conversation because no one speaks like that, and like to pretend that they do or convince yourself that you're reading a transcript of a real conversation is you have to be pretty far up,
far up your own ass
to even remotely think that makes sense.
That this makes sense, or is it?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. This is. I think this is from someone's newsletter, though.
I think it's called Persuasion
Community. I don't know what the community domain is, but it's written by Emily Yoffe, but it's What We Got Wrong and Right About COVID-19. And I believe Emily Yoffe is either Washington Post or Atlantic. Why don't
Something like that.
I'll look her up. You go ahead.
Right. So she's talking with 3 public health officials that are assessing America's response to the crisis and how we should prepare for the next one. It's from July 7th. So just a bit over a month ago. So since early 2020, when COVID-19 began its rapid spread around the world, we've been told that everyone must follow the science.
Atlantic. She's a contributing writer for The Atlantic.
Got it. But science is a method, not a monolith. Scientific assertions change with the arrival of new information. Science resists dogma and tribalism. I laughed out loud. I don't know, maybe people have never worked in scientific academia, but all that said, this broad concept that science, that you change when you are presented with new information. Hey, it's why I like reading challenging things that challenge what I already believe. It's because I like science, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but a lot of people say that because they want you to believe what they're saying.
Right.
Rather than interrogate what they're saying.
Right.
So So some of these principles seem to get lost in the aftermath of the arrival of COVID-19 and the policy response that ensued.
But fortunately, the reasonable people can get to the bottom of what's going on.
And thank
really
goodness for that.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm just gonna.
Also, the good-looking, well-paid, and well-educated white. Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
One of them may not be white. But.
No. I think a couple of them aren't white. It's okay.
But
right. That's the thing. Whiteness is more of a feel than it's more of a vibe.
It's more of a vibe. Well, it's certainly not a scientific biological reality.
It's not a biological reality. It's really just a vibe.
It's a vibe. So we're just vibing here.
Like all these Indian Nazis that you see now. It's like, dude, wait, no, what? That said, I just want to actually, I'm not going to read this trash
word for word.
I'm not going to read it word for word.
Okay.
And it's not totally hot garbage. There were a couple of points where I actually wrote down, you know what? I actually agree with this 100%. They were actually right on this specific point. But this right here is a document whose sole purpose is to recalibrate us for accepting COVID-19 as a normal part of our lives, like a common cold or influenza. That is the point of this document. That is its function. It's a piece of propaganda.
And okay.
And nothing else.
Okay. You want to? Can I say who the three people having the discussion are?
Please go right ahead.
All three are physicians and hold master's degrees in public health. They are Monica Gandhi, a professor of medicine at the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine. Vinay Prasad, an associate professor in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics at the University of California, San Francisco. Interesting. He's a hematologist/oncologist.
Yeah.
Okay. And Stefan Baral, an associate professor in the Department of Epidemiology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
They all self-describe as leftists.
Yes, right. But they also spoke of their concern about how politically polarized their profession became during the pandemic. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? That's
true. That's the thing.
I can only imagine the hallway arguments between like Republican and Democratic epidemiology professors in the halls of their department or at their faculty meetings, right?
Those must have been awkward.
I can only imagine.
Must have been awkward.
I would, you talk about being a fly on the wall. I kind of love to hear some of those discussions. Anyway.
Right. So, one of them says the public health emergency is over because hospitals are in no way overwhelmed.
Aged like milk.
And at one point she actually says that
it smells like bad meat or good cheese.
Yeah. She says epidemic means it causes excess hospitalizations and it's a problem for the healthcare system. That's actually false. That is not the meaning of the word epidemic.
No, it's not.
And I'm not just trying to be
her meaning.
I'm not just trying to be a persnickety ass. Like, well, actually, I've got the dictionary right here.
Right.
I'm not exactly trying to go there.
Right.
I point that out, that this is an outright falsehood from an epidemiologist.
Yeah.
Because she's creating a new frame. A new narrative and a new frame for our understanding what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So she's lying.
Yeah. And
that's why I point that out. Not because I'm being persnickety.
And then, she goes on to say, we're getting close to it being endemic.
As if that's a goal.
As if that's a goal. And we're going to say that's a moved goalpost.
Yeah, right? It is.
And also understanding that zero COVID or complete eradication of an infectious disease is likely not achievable.
Did we talk to you about smallpox?
Polio called. I would like a word.
Like a word?
Smallpox is online too. Good Lord.
And the next is he thinks the worst is over. It's better to judge what a public health threat is by people who are hospitalized. Okay, that's your judge, right? People who are dying, that's your judge. And if that's not happening, mild infections.
July 7th, so this was just over a month ago.
Yep. And so looking at hospitalizations, not cases, I will go this far. Yeah. I do think it's more rational, or not more rational. I think it's more important to look at deaths and hospitalizations than cases for some reasons. But if you're going to look like say for an individual, you want to know your local case count.
Right.
If you are at risk in your community.
And actually, Stefan Baral says, we teach this in class. An epidemic is when you have more cases than you otherwise expect, which is not what she just said.
Nope. And it's, yeah.
Right.
It's also not, that's also not precisely true.
Right. It's not the precise definition. He also says in the U.S. there should be an expectation that there will be an increased number of cases of COVID-19 come this winter.
Again, they're sort of padding the runway here, right?
Yeah, getting they're like warming you up, softening you up to accept
and expect.
Right.
That
a lot of deaths.
A lot of deaths, and frankly, deaths and ongoing illness. That's just normal. We expect that. That's just how it is,
right.
You know.
Well, it is true. Respiratory illnesses
increase in the winter,
ramp up in the fall, and ramp back in the spring.
Right.
Yeah.
Then they talk more about like what should we have learned from this experience.
I worry that yo-yo based approaches are going to be very difficult for people.
Oh yeah.
You think?
Yeah. It would be good if we had a coherent plan. But
they have some bits in this are like actual good critique. There's like the seeds of good critique, but they don't blossom in anything because
they die in the ground.
Yeah. So,
the one where they talk about how making temporary living spaces available for people, that was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Because I know I've thought like, wow, how hard would it be if one of us was sick, but other people weren't sick
Absolutely.
Yet? How would we manage that? Right.
One of them says, we applied a uniform intervention strategy to something that was disproportionately affecting particular communities. This is true, but uses this as an argument against sort of universal lockdowns, right?
Well, and an argument against like universal action to protect those communities.
Right. And we didn't really do... we lock down society, but transmission doesn't happen at the level of society. It happens at the level of households and workplaces. And we didn't really do a lot in those places. Yes, absolutely, this is true. A lot of those workplaces declared essential continued, and we didn't provide those people options in terms of their households.
Right.
Like making temporary living spaces available, especially for people in multi-generational households.
Right.
Yes.
Right. We really didn't take any comprehensive action at a granular level.
Yeah. Another great failure is that we didn't learn a lot. We did many interventions. We didn't actually study very many of them. That's
true.
Yeah.
But the next line that we don't know much more about masks is actually just patently false.
How much to wear masks and under what circumstances. We don't know much more about that than when the pandemic began. That's not true.
That's actually just not true.
Yeah.
That's a complete falsehood. And the other kind of failure is a cultural failure. Several interlocking things, polarizing political figures, et cetera, et cetera.
You know what? A lot of that is just bullshit because there's a new...
And social media was bad.
There's a new piece in Politico explaining just how it was that we went up defunding public health to the point where most public health departments barely function at all.
Yeah.
Severely understaffed. We'll get to that later.
I will also say this other piece I agree with here, where they talk about Zoom being a core failure, right?
Yeah.
And it liberated us, but I think it actually insulated people of a specific class, right?
Yeah.
And he says that here. I actually agree with that.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's true.
That's absolutely true.
It insulated me for the most part. That's why I still work at home. But
right.
I think the social media environment was an abject failure. Well, this sort of comes from a perspective of believing that you can control that. Right.
Like, so we just shouldn't have had social media?
Right.
What do you mean?
Well, you say that.
To some extent, I agree. We shouldn't have had social media.
If you had the same
larger reasons.
Pandemic, literally, without social media, you would have naturally, I think, had a consensus towards centrist risk reduction, a harm reduction philosophy. That makes so many assumptions about like a sort of a center, like left-right political philosophy that has not been true for decades.
First of all, it hasn't been true for decades. And what we actually saw in the face of polio was taking the greatest caution we could.
Yes, but I mean, it's sort of like, do you remember the election of a guy named Trump who basically promised to make liberals cry?
Yeah, that was really his core offer.
Right.
And that motherfucker delivered. Jeez.
But like, and you still think that, oh yeah, everyone would have just naturally gravitated towards universal like harm reduction. No.
Yeah.
No. And it wasn't just social media. I mean, is Fox News social media?
I mean, it's a good question. Maybe it is. Maybe was Walter Cronkite social media? So it's one of the things I'm really struggling with that concept, right, is that what we actually have from the historical record is that we leaned towards exercising caution.
Yes.
Yeah. Not towards, and we leaned towards eradication and not mitigation, even if it would take a long time.
Right. Can you talk about that difference a little bit?
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is actually a really important piece of information. I haven't brought it up yet.
Important concept from public health, but I think it basically is everything about our philosophy here.
So,
not you and my philosophy, but sort of our public health
public health approach, right? So right now, and largely through the whole pandemic, I think the establishment position has been to mitigate coronavirus rather than to suppress it. And that's an important distinction because mitigation is a different goal and a different policy response than suppression. Suppression means you're going to invest money and short-term effort and short-term discomfort towards the goal of suppressing and eradicating the disease. Mitigation means
if you suppress enough, you get to an eradication.
You get to an eradication.
Because it dies out.
Right. Especially with a respiratory virus that's so virulent.
Mm-hmm.
Really, once you have 28 days of 0 cases,
right,
the virus isn't there anymore because it's died.
It's gone until somebody comes back from, an out-of-town trip or whatever.
Precisely. It's gone in a community. So once you have 0 cases for 28 days, it's gone in that community. It can't transmit in that community anymore. And it's been suppressed. That was New Zealand's strategy. That was Mongolia's strategy. Several nations engaged a suppression strategy and were successful relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. Their economic losses were low, and their social gains were high.
Well, because putting someone in quarantine for 2 weeks is a lot cheaper than keeping someone on a ventilator for 2 weeks.
I'm just saying.
A dozen or 20 or 40.
People, or however long. A lot of people are very sick for a long time before they die.
Yeah.
What I witnessed in our process in the United States was, first off, the plan was no plan.
Yes.
The plan was to let this unfold and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And I don't know what anyone called it. I don't know what anyone said they were doing, but that's what we did.
That's what the plan obviously was in reality.
In reality, the plan was no plan.
And I do want to, can I quote this thing about Zoom now?
Oh yeah, quote the Zoom thing.
This is his, one of the, I don't know which one. They're listed by initial.
It's VP.
This is VP.
Yeah, Vinay Prasad.
Okay. I would say is a core failure. The last thing I would say is that sort of a core failure is Zoom.
Right, that's what I was talking about. Right.
Yeah, but I want to unpack it a bit. I think many people think Zoom is what liberated us. Were it not for Zoom, how bad would the pandemic have been? But my counterfactual is different. So, in other words, what if we didn't have Zoom, right?
Right.
Zoom allowed a lot of upper middle class, white collar people the ability to work and make money and not lose their jobs and to exclude themselves from society. That fundamentally changed the pandemic. If you went back 15 years ago and you didn't have Zoom, you'd be facing unprecedented layoffs of wealthy upper middle class people. I think a lot of businesses would have staggered schedules and improved ventilation. Schools would have pushed to reopen. Amazon Prime and Zoom and all those things in our lives allowed a certain class of people to be spared the pains of COVID-19, taking them out of the game and making them silent on many of the issues that affected other communities. I think this is absolutely true.
100% true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. To whatever extent you want to say this is a matter of personal guilt or whatnot, I'm totally, we're guilty of that.
Oh, I don't feel any guilt about it, but yes, that was us.
But we were able to largely get through things. I didn't work entirely remotely, but for a good chunk of 2020 I did. And I am again now since April, right? Almost entirely. Right. And this has been, although it's not great in some ways. It has kept us feeling much safer and kept our risk levels much lower.
Right.
And it's true to some extent. We were able to not really see close up and in person just the degree to which people are being thrown into the meat grinder.
Right.
And not entirely, though, because we still know many people who are infected, have been infected, sometimes multiple times.
And couldn't avoid it.
There's
nothing they could have done.
Right.
Right. And, I was almost finished with mitigation versus suppression. Yes. So the deal with the two different approaches is your goals are fundamentally different. Mitigation means you keep the hospitals open.
Yep.
And you offer people medication and treatment. Okay?
Yep.
Suppression means you take widespread social measures, all of them.
Right.
Pharmaceutical,
everything
non-pharmaceutical, everything you can do to suppress transmission of the disease.
But most critically, not just in an authoritarian way, but in a supportive way.
Right?
Because you can't just cut off a person's ability to earn a living and
eat.
And ask them to stay home,
right?
On their own recognizance,
right.
without paying their salary,
right.
without feeding them.
And a lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic were like, "How are people supposed to stay home? How would they eat?" I'm like, "Well, we could support people with that." No, that's socialism or whatever the response was, but they were just couldn't even imagine.
Right.
And it's true. If you just say it's against the law for you to go to work now, people are just going to break that law.
Of course,
right.
Because it's
so that's not where,
that, or you evicted and you run out of food,
right? And you're just going to roam the streets now. Where would you go? So the policy response needs to include housing every homeless person so they can stay at home. The policy response needs to be taking over salaries. We've had an eviction moratorium,
right.
Which actually makes no fucking sense.
It doesn't make. All it does is ramp up hostility between the rentier landlord class and the renter class.
And even the sort of the sociological side, just push that aside and just think about that. If you are out of work and don't pay rent for 9 months,
sure,
and the eviction moratorium is lifted, now you're just out of a home. So now you're looking at widespread homelessness.
Suddenly you went, from being a little behind on your rent to a year behind on your
rent. And where is that money supposed to come from, right? So the policy response needs to cover all these things.
They're going to throw you out post-haste because they've got to try to recoup some of that loss.
Precisely. So all those things, people need to be able to eat, they need to have housing, they need clean water. All those things need to happen immediately to engage a suppression response, right?
Right.
And now the problem here is that your actions are different, your policy is different, and what we actually saw unfold here was rhetoric about suppressing while we engaged policy to mitigate.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and we were telling people that the intervention we were proposing and pushing everyone into, first of all, which is it's a product to buy, like you say,
right,
is going to achieve
herd immunity, which will in the pandemic, and it's over.
Which will lead to eradication. So it is suppression and eventually eradication.
Right.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't, and never could have been, because we didn't have a terminating vaccine that stops you from transmitting the disease.
Always mitigation.
So mitigation was always the plan. Mitigation was only ever
on offer.
The policy, only on offer, and only ever the policy features that we engaged. That's all that's been on the table.
Yeah.
So
this is where I got. So VP in this essay is the only one of these people who I would really consider to have even a remotely left-wing orientation.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So he talks about how, supposedly we close schools, but let's not pretend we closed them for everyone, because private schools remained open.
And, St. Francis worked at the whole thing.
Right. So he also, this is where one of my talking points about Fauci, right? I liken it to when Dr. Anthony Fauci spoke to Donald McNeil, then of the New York Times, and McNeil asked, "What's the herd immunity threshold and why do you keep raising it?" And Fauci admitted that he intentionally gave a lower number at first because he didn't believe the public was ready to hear what he really thought.
Indeed.
I guess a noble lie by definition is when an official withholds some truth or deceives you because they want you to do something that they believe is best, but that's playing with fire. The moment you get caught once doing it, you're going to lose a lot of people who will never trust you again.
Bam.
I think these noble lies are one of the greatest poisons in the profession.
100%.
100%. So this guy, I like almost everything he says in here.
Just about, right.
But, yeah.
And it's the thing I've been saying for a year, that public health is about earning and maintaining public trust. That's the job.
Right, right.
All the other stuff is ancillary, because if people don't trust you, you can't do a damn thing.
Yeah, and the same with Al-Sayed basically kind of advocating lying without openly advocating lying is, that's part of a worldview that
the noble lie is good.
And that he's an authoritarian, and we should trust him because of his authority. But nobody does that.
Yeah.
I mean, in the real world.
Yeah, is that cool?
Yeah, in the real world. In the indoctrinated world of institutions and like people who are, educated into homogeneity, right? They come out of the indoctrination and out of the institutions believing, as true believers, true Bible believers,
right.
And that works for them.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me.
No.
It doesn't work for most people.
For most people.
Outside.
Because we can smell the lie.
Yeah.
A lot of folks may not know precisely what you're saying that's wrong, but they know that what you're saying doesn't add up.
They know they don't trust you.
They don't trust you, and what you're saying doesn't add up.
Because you're on TV and your eyes are shifting back and forth,
Right. I'm just saying, right? Yes. And I remember one conversation I had with a fellow who was an epidemiologist, talking about how fantastic it was the CDC had lifted mask requirements for vaccinated people. And I said, are you out of your fucking mind?
Yes.
Why should we expose immunocompromised children to this kind of risk?
I know. Oh, I never thought of that.
Well, he said, I already mentioned that. Look at my point 3 above. His point 3 was case numbers are down. So because case numbers are down,
it's okay.
It's okay,
right,
to put children with compromised immune systems at risk.
Yeah, not okay.
It was not okay, and
we didn't used to think that was okay.
We didn't think that was cool. That was not a thing we thought.
Yeah,
but apparently it's what we think now, and that curiously is a norm I see across epistemological universes.
Yeah, a couple of the other people in this conversation talk about how important it is not to wear masks because you don't want to avoid stimulating your immune system.
Mary and Joseph.
Right.
Actually, the data indicates that regular exposure to the microbiomes in soil stimulates your immune system.
Yes.
So regular soil exposure. That's the data. That's what they're talking about.
Right.
Not actually being exposed to
dangerous infectious disease. Colds aren't that dangerous. But
no.
Yes.
But no, it's this sort of like, it's a soft version of the folks who are like, well, let everyone catch it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It'll be good for you. I think that really does happen, that your immune system does. But I think the closer correlation is lack of exposure to the outdoors, specifically healthy soil.
So this is probably, and to this extent, some of our more rural friends are probably right. And they're like, you know what, fresh air and sunshine helps with all of this.
Helps with all this. Well, and also just like, playing in the woods,
right,
checking out skunks,
right, including our kids. But that doesn't mean that it's going to keep you safe from COVID.
No.
It might help you keep you from having sick days from colds.
All right. Here's what I think it really does, right? I think a lot of autoimmune diseases that we see prevalent in society.
Yeah, it might keep you from being overburdened with allergies. Allergies
and various autoimmune illnesses.
Yeah.
I think there's a relationship. I don't think it's been firmly proven, like a cause and effect, and causality is really a hard bugbear to pin down.
Right.
But we have seen a strong correlation between lack of exposure to healthy soil, because it's not just dirt. It's healthy soil.
No, it's a whole biome.
It's a whole biome.
Yeah.
And your gut flora
right,
influence your immune system in a way that protects you from autoimmune over responses and immune under responses.
Yeah, so a healthy diet, no doubt, has an awful lot to do
healthy
with
diet
it as well.
And really, like this sort of thing that's become a bit of a joke.
Fecal transplants.
Not fecal transplants, but the fresh, just fresh air and sunshine, take your vitamin D, you should be fine. That stuff does go a long way. It's really valuable to you, and you should be getting your vitamin D, your zinc, and plenty of sunshine and exercise. It's true. It's good for you and it's important. Personally, I don't know that I'm ever going in a public place without a mask again. I have found it too marvelous not to be exposed to random viruses and to not have just random nonsense coming back to my house.
Yeah.
That's really been valuable to me. I don't plan to give that up. And I am in the sort of like hyper prevention camp. I've always been an excessive, I won't even say excessive. I'm trying to use the word Nazi less, but I absolutely am a hand-washing Nazi.
Yes.
And was always doing PSAs about hand washing before the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just about the simplest intervention you can ask.
It's so simple.
Anyone.
It's so easy. And it's so effective.
Yes,
that's the thing for me.
It's remarkably, unreasonably effective.
It's unreasonably effective. It saves lives. So, yes, I'm really a big fan of hand washing for that reason. And I know I got on my hand washing hobby horse at the beginning of the pandemic. But now that I've actually, and I should also admit that about 18 years ago, 20 years ago, when the first SARS epidemic swept through Asia and was devastating. Because remember, COVID is a SARS, it's SARS-CoV-2, right? I had a friend that had gone to China, and masking was universal there, and she came back through the Detroit hub and stopped to see me.
Yes.
And she was masking, and we masked up, and I thought to myself, I should wear a mask all the time. This is a good idea. And I was too embarrassed to do anything about it. I was like, how much of a weirdo am I? How weird do I have to be? I'm already, just a freak. I'm not going to wear a mask too. No, it's a bridge too far. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to wear a mask into public places and for it not to be socially shamed about it, it's a huge benefit to me personally. And I think I can just be that weird old lady that doesn't want to take her mask off after the pandemic.
Okay.
I think we're there. We've been there. Have we been there? I think we're there.
I think we're going to wind up this segment because
it's 2.5 hours.
I was going to try and record 2 segments today, but you know what? We already had a bunch of healthy outdoor activity in the dirt. And mosquito bites.
Got our microbes.
And we've got a dinner on cooking, and it's going to be lit. We're actually doing a Scarborough Fair meal.
Yes.
We're roasting. We're making a roast with it's a Sunday dinner with. That's the thing. Those roasts and all that we cooked earlier, and all the chicken legs. Those were going to be like Sunday dinners.
Yeah.
Right? But instead they were dinners we gave away to other people, which is
wonderful.
Fine. It's great to be able to.
One of my friends' kitchen actually 2 of my friends, their kitchens weren't working
because if you had an electric stove, you were kind of screwed.
Just SOL.
So, we did get pizza the one night, and we had to put lanterns in our driveway because our porch lights weren't out. Right.
But the real benefit is now we know of a pizza place that delivers out here. It's 4 years we haven't been able to find a pizza place that delivers.
Right. Yeah.
But now we know.
So we found one. Yeah.
Scarborough Fair.
Oh yeah. So tonight's meal is it features herbs that I would be taken to Scarborough Fair. We have parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme
in a paste with grapeseed oil.
Yeah, on a bed of thyme and also some onion from
onion from the garden, and sort of like just kind of crusted over the roast and then slow roasted.
And slow roasted. So we're going to go eat it, I think.
I think that's next.
Yeah. But anyway.
If you listened to this far, we're here for you. Thanks.
Thank you all for listening. We would like to solicit a couple of things.
Yep.
I would like to solicit any comments and questions that we might help you answer. Insults, whatever you'd like to throw at us. We also are soliciting screams.
Please. Because, the impetus for this, we were talking about doing a podcast, and then one day I was just bitching. I was just bitching about the leadership response to COVID.
Yes.
And you're like, so we're going to do this podcast? You're just going to scream and swear into the mic for half an hour? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Yes. And honestly, we were asking, a lot of people would like to express their outrage and rage along with us. So if you would like to send us a recording of a scream of rage of some kind, frustration, sobs, or whatever.
That's all good. Toddlers.
We will try to put something together using these audio clips. So
that would be great. And we would love it.
Get in touch. Send some files to my email or Grace's email. If you already follow us on social media in some way, you can
just hit us up.
Get in touch via direct message if you don't already have our email addresses, and send us something.
Yeah. Don't send me a direct message. Just post something on my page. My DMs on Facebook are just a hot mess. It's just garbage. It's a hot fire.
You can.
No, it's awful.
If you leave a comment on the
Grace and Paul Pottscast page.
Yeah, I believe I'll be notified, and I can then follow up with you to figure out how you can get me a file.
Yeah, but yeah, just
somehow.
Just drop something on my page or something.
Yeah,
I'll get it.
You can DM me on Twitter. You can send an email. You can send something on Facebook. We'll figure out something. But we're trying to put this together, and we still are not entirely clear how many segments this is going to be.
I think we're at 6 right now.
This is
4.
This is number 4.
And I think we have another 2. We have another one, and then like a roundup.
We have at least one more, and I'm trying to arrange an interview for yet another segment, and then somehow we'll bring this all to some kind of a giant crashing conclusion.
I have a third of an essay.
You do?
That I think I want for the
to
closer.
wind up with.
To wind up with,
okay.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening. I know these are unbearably long for some people.
Yeah.
They're long for us too.
We're all suffering together.
Well, I'm suffering more than most because I have to edit. Right. It's not so easy if you've just sort of been rambling and babbling to figure out what to keep and what to toss.
And rambling and babbling is really kind of our...
It's our shtick. It's our lifestyle, really.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. So. All right, folks. Take care. Bye.
Yep, stay safe.
Gotta live, gotta live, gotta live.